The past 24 hours have been really illuminating in the crypto market, and while we can never predict the crypto market with complete certainty, I do think that it may have just shown its hand as to what we might be seeing next because of all the different fundamental factors that we have seen play out recently in the crypto market. So I want to talk about all of those today. Now, first off, I want to take a quick look at the crypto bubbles. Let's just jump right on into it because we can see a nice little bounce coming here on the day and maintaining a green week as well. Obviously, we do have some reds here and there. It's not, kind of full on up only. We have had some kind of mixed performances, particularly out of some that have performed quite strongly over the past little bit, namely things like IP, Curve, Chronos, Athena, WorldCoin. These are ones that have really jumped pretty hard. Even things like Mix too. They've all jumped pretty hard. So it's not really super surprising that we are seeing a little bit of a pullback in things like this. But overall, we can see an overall pretty decent move in the market. Most notably, things like Bitcoin up 4.3%, Ethereum up 4%, and Solana up 11%. Now, another thing we are seeing that I think is very noteworthy in its own reason is because we are actually seeing Bitcoin dominance go up a little bit after a pretty sustained move down over the past several months. I mean, we basically kind of broke down out of this trend line that we can see. We've been following up for basically years, depending on kind of which trend line we're looking at. But we did break down here towards the beginning of July and have basically been in a downtrend ever since. Now, we have started to see things start to stutter out, a little bit here first. Well, I guess a little bit here first. Then we saw kind of a further push down, a little bit of a stutter here. Here we were just kind of sideways trading, but now we are starting to see a little bit of momentum coming back to the upside. Now, in my opinion, Bitcoin dominance rising back up is not the end of the world if it's because Bitcoin is going up. Now, if Bitcoin dominance continues to rise because Bitcoin is holding flat and all of the alts are going down, that is of course not necessarily an ideal outcome. But if Bitcoin starts to see another rise up and we see Bitcoin dominance rising because it's just outperforming and everything is going up, I think that is probably like the ideal outcome here. And so we'll have to watch very closely to see kind of what happens here. But what we can see over the past couple weeks, if we look at the Bitcoin chart here, is we have actually seen a fairly nice little move coming in from Bitcoin. So we have seen a move up, and during this time, we have seen both Bitcoin dominance rise a little bit as well as Bitcoin dominance staying flat. So this is good because it means just that the overall market is just going up, which is of course very good to see. And we can see here on the daily charts here, we do have a little bit of this kind of breakout of this descending trend line here. We have kind of that nice move up, and now we have just kind of been consolidating within this range. We have a little bit of resistance here to the upside, kind of at like the 116.5 range. If we were to go and put a line here, you'll see pretty clearly that there's a decent bit of resistance kind of historically. This was a massive level of support before we broke through it kind of towards the end of July. And then we have kind of tried to establish some support here a couple of more times while also being a decent level of resistance too. So this is kind of the main region that we are looking at. And then of course we are kind of just consolidating up in this region. Now it's important to see for a couple of different reasons. RSI, we still do have plenty of room to run, but we did actually run into this with a lot of different cryptos where we ran into the top of the Bollinger Bands here pretty quickly. And so the fact that we've moved up and consolidated while we've let the Bollinger Bands kind of give us some more space, I do think that that is very telling that there is still the upward momentum here, and we just need to see a little bit more space happen before we see that next move to the upside. So we're seeing a little bit of that consolidation going on. So this is something that I'm going to be watching for very closely. You can see here that I am using Weex. The reason why is because I think ideally what I'm going to be looking for is a little bit of a move to the upside here, bounce, and then again kind of a move, a continuation of the move to the upside, because what we are looking at here is of course a very strong level of resistance, but if we can break it and then see a bounce off of it, there is a very realistic possibility that we at least start to take a look towards the 120,000 range and potentially up towards these all-time highs at the 124,000 range. So this is where I'm going to be looking at very closely, and I will be looking to enter a leverage trade here if we do see that happen. Now, if you are interested, of course, I do have those links in the description below to Weex, BTCC, and BloFin. BTCC does currently have the best deposit bonus, though I do generally tend to use Weex just because I think that one's kind of my favorite. BloFin I do use as well, but the 10% free money from BTCC is definitely a fantastic offer if you are looking for kind of maximum value there. Now, moving along, I want to take a look at the total three, because this is the key thing where I personally think we are starting to see the market show its hand for its next move, is because we're seeing a lot of different things start to happen. First off, we've seen a nice bounce out of Bitcoin as we just went over. We've seen the Bitcoin dominance really start to, like level out, maybe even start to come to the upside, but we are still seeing general strength from alts. If we look at alts, we are within a hair's breadth away from all-time highs here for altcoins. You can see here we had a little bit of some retracing over the past couple of days, but some massive wicks up as we've gotten towards this level of support, showing that we are establishing a decent level of support, kind of at this like $1.09 to $1.1 trillion range. This is of course very good to see because it is continuing to show strength out of alts, which historically we really have not seen. So this is a very, very good thing to see, and it does provide potentially some good signs of some continuation to the upside and potentially another break. Now, one thing that we will be going over in more detail in just a couple of minutes here is I don't actually think that a break here is imminent. I think we are probably at least looking at Friday afternoon, maybe even, probably not the weekends, just because weekends usually don't move too much. And then most likely probably something in kind of that following week after, for a couple of different reasons, but one of the main ones being that we have some major things coming on this week with the FOMC meeting and the quad witching event. Again, we'll be talking about both of those in a second, but the main thing that I want to focus on here right now is the fact that we are seeing some major support coming in, and we're seeing some relative strength out of altcoins, which is of course very, very good to see. And the fact that we are seeing Bitcoin dominance start to rise while we are still seeing strength out of altcoins, that's totally okay, at least in my perspective, because it does show that just the overall crypto market is starting to heat up and just show general strength overall. We're not kind of doing this horse trading type of thing that we have been basically seeing over the past 2 years or so. Now, moving along, you can see with the strength of altcoins, we're seeing something similar like this out of XRP as well. We see that move up, that kind of retrace here, that bounce here. We can see this looking very, very similar to what we saw out of the total three in terms of recent movement. Now we do of course have our XRP trade open here, which is up about 40%, so it's looking good, but we are seeing a little bit of that nice bounce here. This is good to see, of course, because it does, at least in my opinion, continue to show that we have that indication of that further move to the upside. We've talked about it several times before on the XRP chart, so I don't want to get too repetitive here, but we have seen these things in the past where we see these like kind of break of structure, major move, break of structure, major move. We've seen the break of structure here. Now, ideally, we're just waiting on that major move. And based on some of the analysis we've done in the past, it does, if we see a similar move in magnitude from what we've seen in the past, we could very easily see that move us well over that $4 range for XRP. So things looking really, really good here. And, again, we'll just continue to keep updated on this trade. Currently up about 40%, moving fairly nicely. It's been a little bit of a slow burn. You can see it's been kind of moving fairly reliably. Now, the other thing that I want to check out here today is just going over a couple of our favorite charts to show a lot of what we are seeing generally reflected in the total 3 chart. Again, to me, this is indicating just general large and overall strength from the alt market. We can see here, same thing with Solana, saw that move up, saw that retrace. Now we are seeing a bounce here, looking very good. We can also see something for ICP. ICP, again, looking a little bit weaker compared to the rest. But if we look, you can see we saw it hit that resistance, came back down, hit this kind of like high liquidity zone, and now we're starting to see a bounce again, looking good. We can see something very similar for Arrow as well. Also, make sure to stay tuned, hit that like and subscribe and the notification bell. I am going to be having a video come out later today for Arrow. We've seen some frankly insane news come out for Aerodrome that I really think you are going to want to hear. So if you are interested, like I said, just hit that notification bell and you will get notified when that video goes live later today. Really, really impressive stuff. But we've seen similar here. We saw a little bit of a move up, not exactly similar to what we've seen out of the total 3. We've seen a very, very strong level of support get put in, kind of in this like $1.15 to like $1.10 range. We saw a nice little bounce here. We've seen a pretty strong rejection. Again, this is, I think, a lot of like volatility due to the recent announcements coming out. This is generally a very, very strong time for a lot of manipulation, as we can see here. So nothing too concerning here. We can also see something very, very similar going on with Kaspa as well. Nice little bounce, come back to a key level of support, bounce again. great news to see. A whole bunch of stuff looking good. And then of course we do continue to consolidate within this much larger structure that we have been following for a very long time with Kaspa. And you'll see something very, very similar with ZBEC. ZBEC and Kaspa, I think, are looking kind of the most similar right now. With ZBEC, we're seeing something a little bit different in the sense that it's had a bit larger of a retrace after a bounce off structure, but we have, again, come back, bounce off of structure, continue to run. Things looking good. It does look like we may be getting rejected by this level of resistance here. But as I have mentioned, as long as we stay within this wedge, nothing really matters too heavily, at least in my opinion, for ZBEC. So hopefully you are seeing that there's a lot of things looking very, very similarly within the altcoin market right now. They're coming back to key levels of support, putting in kind of that higher low in many cases, and then starting to bounce again. This, in my opinion, is of course showing some very strong support in the alt market, which is of course very, very good news. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things towards the end of this week, because even though we are seeing some good things from a fundamental perspective and a structural perspective on a lot of our favorite coins here, I don't think that we are going to see anything meaningful happen other than a whole bunch of manipulation happening for the end of this week. And the reason why I say that is because we have two things coming in over the next couple of days. First off, we have the FOMC meeting happening tomorrow, and then we also have the quad witching event happening on Friday. First off, we'll start with the FOMC because that is probably a little bit more well known. We can see here there is a 96% chance, at least per the CME group, that we see a 25 basis point rate cut tomorrow. This, I think, is basically consensus at this point. The market has essentially fully priced this in. There's a very, very small outside chance that we see a 50 basis point rate cut, but I would be quite surprised if we did see something like that. I think 25 basis points is essentially already effectively consensus, and I think we are also kind of like, it's already priced into the market. So realistically, I don't actually expect to see any real moves happen after the rate cut news tomorrow, because the Fed has effectively already admitted that it's going to happen. Any moves that we see kind of before or after, I will fully chalk up to manipulation events and people trying to trade things that they realistically shouldn't be trading, because everybody is already kind of operating off of this type of news. Now, if we see a 50 basis point cut, of course that completely changes. But again, I'm not going to spend too much time focusing on that because I just don't think we're going to get there. Now, moving along, I want to discuss the quad witching event, because the quad witching event is something that happens only 4 times a year, and it usually leads to a ton of volatility and volume. Now, again, this is not to say that we're going to see 20-30% swings in a single day, but usually the quad witching is an event where there are 4 derivatives: the stock index futures, options, single stock futures, and options all expire at once. Now, the reason why this is important is because there's usually a lot of trading that happens during this time for people to essentially kind of get right with their trades, right? Whether they're, needing to, reopen positions, close them, double them, cut them, whatever, anything that they need to be doing. There is generally a lot more volume on these witching days because of all of these kind of options expiring or all these derivatives expiring at once. So essentially this creates significant stock volatility because funds are rolling their positions, as I mentioned. And so sometimes that volatility will spill into the crypto ecosystem, particularly Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is, of course, I would say half kind of dialed into this kind of traditional finance scene. So that's a lot of what we are seeing today. This is something I think is very, very important to focus on. And that's why I'm pretty confident that I don't think we see any real sustained moves through the end of this week. I think we'll see a lot of volatility. I think we'll see a lot of volume. I think we'll see a lot of manipulation, but sustained moves, I don't think we will see. I think that probably starts towards like next week, is if I had to guess, when we start to see the market starts to digest a lot of kind of what's coming next. So overall, there's a lot of different things going on in the market. This is kind of a jam-packed update today. Hopefully you found all of it useful and helpful. If you did, of course, a like and a subscribe does help. And then you can, of course, hit that notification bell. I'm telling you, this Aerodrome video is going to be pretty nuts. So you definitely should check it out. Just make sure that you are staying around to stay updated for when I release new content like that. So overall, thank you all so much for tuning in. Any comments, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section below as well. I do like to read and respond to all of those. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.